Welcome to Larking Gowen Insights, accountancy and business advice for all. A series that gives you bite-sized tips and guidance on tax, funding, legislation, reforms and much more. With case studies, business advisory and sector specials and even interviews, our team of experts are committed to helping you navigate the world of accounting and finance with a variety of presenters from across our specialisms. So, let's get on with today's show.
Hello, today we are going to talk to you about the changes that the government has announced for the UK tourism, leisure and hospitality sector regarding the Great British Summer Savings Scheme, what that means in practice and how it will affect local operators. I'm Jo Burton, Tourism Director here at Larking Gowen, and I'm joined today by my colleague and VAT specialist, Gilly McGill. Hi Gilly.
Hi Jo. We're going to be talking to you today about the VAT changes that have been announced under the guise of the Great British Summer Savings. Difficult to say, perhaps even more difficult for operators to implement.
So this follows on from our tourism business survey and seminar that we held back in May, which is in its 20th year. We publish a survey and all the results and the findings and real life case studies and some insights from us. This data builds on previous years' topical matters, one of which being VAT and whether the 20% that it's currently is for all businesses, whether that's the right number for the sector and what impact it would have on those businesses if that rate was reduced.
And then during the actual presentation of the survey results, an announcement was made by the government in live time for this temporary reduced rate that was going to apply to some of the supplies that the tourism, leisure and hospitality sector make during the summer period. So very much moving from a request to government for some support for the sector into a real-time problem of trying to implement this relief.
That's right, and I think it was, as you say, it was right in the middle of the survey. I think I'd just said something like, "Oh, the government has said they're not going to reduce any rates," and there it was, bam. So it was well received, and we all need to take a little time to then read that legislation and understand what it actually means, and to looking into the detail. So from my understanding, what they've actually announced, it's a 69-day window running from the 25th of June through to the 1st of September, and the standard 20% VAT rate has been slashed to just 5% on qualifying children's meals and family admissions. I think it's designed to give hard-pressed families a bit of a break at the tills for the summer, and hopefully for our listeners running pubs, cafes and attraction, hopefully there's a bit of help for them there. But I do think it's a mixed bag from what we've discussed with some businesses locally.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some complexity that businesses will need to get to grips with ahead of that June implementation date if they want to take advantage of this relief. The first thing is that it's not everything that those businesses do that is going to be suddenly at the 5% rate of VAT rather than the 20% rate of VAT. As you said, we were talking about children's meals. Those will be at the 5% rate. And also children's tickets for things like cinemas, theatres, where you can specifically allocate a price and charge a child's ticket. That VAT rate will be reduced. And then for other types of family-based attractions, the admissions as a whole will go down from 20% to 5%. So making sure that you know that you fall within one of those categories, or perhaps two categories if you have a family attraction with a restaurant that provides children's meals, is going to be really important.
And I think that's really relevant, looking at those singular categories. But also, I'm thinking about what if you've got a family of four, perhaps, who walk into a pub and they think, right, we're going to have our dinner, and what might that look like if you've got children's meals mixed with some fizzy drinks? How does that work, Gilly?
Yeah, there's been very, very little information. We had the legislation only last week, and even that has no further information in its explanatory notes. So we're kind of operating a bit blind here. And whilst we know what the government's intentions are in the legislation, we don't know how HM Revenue and Customs is going to approach this situation. So we do need to act with some caution, I think. So for children's meals, we know that they have to be genuine children's meals. And by that I mean they can't be small adult meals. They have to be advertised as a child's meal on a child's menu, perhaps. Doesn't mean that an adult can't eat them. That would still qualify, but you need to be offering them as a child's meal. If that child's meal encompasses also a drink, then the drink will also be at the reduced rate. That's fine. If it's a meal and you buy the drink separately, the drink would be at 20%. So again, that's a bit of complexity, and businesses might need to think about whether it makes sense perhaps to start offering that meal with a drink included, just for simplicity, if nothing else.
So for the staff on the tills, they need some training too. I think it's not, hopefully people are looking at their systems and their EPOS systems, their tills. But I guess there's some training needed also for those people.
That's a really good point, because you may well have customers coming in and asking, specifically, well, where's my 15% discount, as they would see it? So you need to equip your staff who are front of house with a script that they can follow that is authentic and, is evidence-based by what the business is doing.
So we've talked a little bit about food. And I guess the other side of that is the attractions. Do you think that's administratively a little bit easier?
It probably is administratively easier once you have confirmed that you are within that qualifying sector. So we know things, like I said, like cinemas and theatres where you've got a child's ticket. That's quite simple, because you will probably already have those at a different price bracket anyway. So there'll be something within your system that identifies that income anyway. So much easier to then charge that at 5% VAT rather than 20%, assuming that your venue is not within the cultural exemption for VAT. But then other sorts of attractions where there isn't necessarily a child's ticket. So we're thinking here, well, soft play is mentioned. I would say that's pretty much a child's aimed attraction, but any other type of venue. I've had a query from a stately home asking whether they would be in this qualifying reduced rate. What we need here is to make sure we have something that is a family focused attraction. Now that might be doing something akin to what the National Trust do in the school holidays, where they put on a particular child-centred activity to try and bring families into their venues. Something like that will really help shore up that what you have got is a family-focused attraction and enable you then to access the 5%.
So I'm a business owner, and this hopefully is welcome for some business owners. We'll talk a little bit about those cost savings and whether they're being passed on in a moment. But it's a 69-day scheme, which is good, and it's over the summer, it's over the busy period, which is a great thing. Is it worth, do you think, reprogramming your EPOS system and actually getting into the back end of the till, updating your prices on all your items, or do you think actually I can just do this on paper and I'll just keep a note of it and I'll bung it on my VAT return? What do you think is the best practice?
It's a good question. It's a lot to do in a short space of time for a short period of time. It's absolutely clear, though, that simply taking your income and working out VAT at 5% rather than 20% sort of on a piece of paper, like you say, is not going to be acceptable. Remember that for VAT, we are within Making Tax Digital. All records that form part of your VAT return need to be held digitally. So that could be a spreadsheet, that's fine, but you need to be doing something a little bit more sophisticated. Whether you're going to go to the lengths of actually going in and reprogramming all of your prices on your EPOS system so that you're giving that 15% reduction or not is up to you as a business owner. Now, there's an expectation, and I think the HM Revenue and Customs brief says the government expects that savings will be passed on to families, and clearly that's politically the way this is being sold as helping out hard-pressed families. But actually there's no compulsion upon businesses to pass that saving on. If it's more beneficial to your business, or perhaps to the survival of your business, to retain that uplifted margin, then you can. But what you put in your VAT return when you submit that to HMRC will show 5% on the appropriate income.
And just on that point, we have spoken to a few businesses in that period since the announcement up till now, and what they were doing, and what they're planning to do, how they're planning to tackle this, and what they're looking at for their own specific business. We had quite some quite mixed responses. I think about 70% said that they had supplies that were eligible, because of course there's some businesses that aren't eligible. But when it came down to pricing, 29% said they expected to pass the reduction on in full. 42% said they would pass it on partially, and 18% said they were not planning to change their pricing at all, and actually they were going to take the benefit from that. And that doesn't add up to 100, and there's still those people there who are like, I still don't know, and actually we're really close to it now. We've got a week or so to go, and still people were unsure whether.
I mean, it's got to be a commercial decision. What's right for your business, what market you're operating in. Would reducing prices actually increase the footfall to your place, or is that not a concern? And actually, what you need to do is ensure that you've actually got enough money to continue operating after the summer. And
that resonates very much with what we discussed in our tourism survey back, but we asked these questions back in March, where what would the impact be of a VAT reduction. There was lots of responses along the lines of, this would help me survive, this would help my business actually continue, it would allow me to employ staff, it would allow me to breathe. And I think there's so much of that I think that whilst this is welcome, and as you say, it's been badged as helping families, but it has got to help business too.
Absolutely.
So I guess one question I had, which I sort of asked myself and I've asked other people, is, do we think this is effective? In my mind, it's a start. It's an intention to clearly save the money for consumers. But for those businesses who are saying we need a VAT cut to survive, a short summer measure may not be enough on its own. So with Tom Kerridge, who's talking about that's the problem, and lots of people on social media joining that campaign, there's lots of petitions out there to reduce that VAT rate down to 10%. Can you see that coming, Gilly?
It's a really tricky one, because when you look at the evidence, I know COVID isn't a great exemplar to use, because obviously those were exceptional times. But we have evidence from other countries within the EU who have a lower rate of VAT for tourism. There is no good evidence that reduction gets passed on to the consumer. So the businesses are keeping that for themselves typically. And that is always the same. Whenever there's a VAT relief, it tends not to get passed on to the consumer. So it never results in a reduction in price. Now, if your intention with a policy change is to help the consumer, giving VAT relief is not the most effective way of doing that. If your intention is to help businesses continue to operate, absolutely it gives a bit of breathing space, like you say, Jo. The challenge the government has is, if they're helping this sector, what about the care sector, let's say, who have the same sort of staffing profile, a lot of casual staff, a lot of staff on national minimum wage. Obviously, they had the big increases in wage and NICs recently. Why is tourism different to, say, care? That is also really struggling. That's a hard one for a government to get past, I think. One way they might be able to make an exception for tourism is if we do end up having overnight levies introduced. Having those with a VAT reduced rate is a little bit more palatable, I think, for most businesses.
Agree. I think, and there's talk of that coming in, isn't there? With the devolved powers of the mayor in the future. And I think we are one of the highest VAT rate countries in Europe. The majority is around 10%, and I think an overnight levy or a tax, tourism tax, is not unusual in those countries where you've got a 10% and then a bit on top of that. Doesn't feel quite so painful, but I guess because we are 20% already, and then on top of that just feels like tax on tax on tax. I wonder if it puts people off coming to the UK. Are we on a level playing field with the likes of the EU countries? that's what concerns me most, is that I feel like it then makes us uncompetitive. It's not just just for those tourism businesses, it's for the whole region, I suppose. So, you've got a pub, people come to the pub, people will then go to the pub to the restaurant. They might think we're going to go somewhere else, go and spend the day here, spend the week here, and bringing those people in the first place, feeling like it's an affordable place to come, then everybody thrives from that uptake in footfall, I think. So I agree, there are lots of other businesses who are affected by VAT and all the other compounding costs. I mean, there's so many things that have happened, and the increase in, as you say, minimum wage, and I think there's that nervousness about what's happening next, as well. Okay, so we've talked a little bit around some of the impact, so what businesses are thinking, how they're feeling. What are the real practical things that we need to be doing or need to be advising on to make sure people are ready?
So the first thing is making sure you know whether you qualify, what you does qualify, and then what of your income streams is going to therefore be at the reduced rate. So do that sort of stand back analysis first of all. Then you're going to have to make a decision. And as we discussed, that's going to be a commercial decision about whether you reduce your prices wholly or partly for that VAT reduction or not. And if there is a price reduction, obviously you're going to have to update all of your EPOS systems, your advertising, website, etc., so that is reflected there. You're going to need to, as we discussed, probably train staff so that they know what message it is that they're going to pass on to customers if they're asked the question about this discount. We're also recommending that our clients and any organisations we speak to keep evidence of all of this. So I made reference before to making sure that your attraction is a family focused attraction, and what you might do to make sure that you are in the 5% if that's where you want to be. Keep that evidence, because remember, HM Revenue and Customs has got 4 years in which they can come back and query why was it that particular sale was at 5%, not 20%. You can probably, make an explanation for it, but if you've got the evidence to hand and you can show, we did this new children's menu, here's a copy of it, or we put on these family event days, here's our advertising, this is how we captured the income streams, this is what we did in our systems to make sure it was charged at 5%, not 20%, all of that. It will just present a more robust picture to HMRC. They're more likely to go away and leave you alone more quickly. And there's nothing worse from an HMRC inquiry. Well, getting things wrong and getting a bill is bad, but it's the time and the distraction from running your business that it can cause. So the quicker and cleaner you can get them away, the better.
That's great advice, Gilly. Thank you for that. So I think, in short, check if it applies to you. Yeah. If it don't assume it's automatic. Check the rules, update your systems, train your staff, and think strategically about those pricing and family offers, and how you can make that work for you. Keep good records, and what I would also say is, if you're unsure of any of that, speak to your advisors, because we have people here at Larking Gowen who can help you. Equally, speak to your accountant, speak to your bookkeeper, speak to your staff and your team to make sure everybody is up to speed and ready and on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you want any help, what we've discussed today, or any help on VAT generally, please do contact either myself or Gilly. We'd be very pleased to help you. Our details are in the show notes, or via our website, where you can also find the full results of our Tourism Business Survey 2026 and previous podcasts and various insights. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for Larking Gowen Insights, Accountancy and Business Advice for All. Don't forget, you can find more information about today's topic and more about how our team of experts can help you in your business by visiting our website, larking-gowen.co.uk. Join us again next time for another fascinating insight into the world of accounting and finance.